Today we're talking about underpaintings. Underpaintings are completely optional in your artwork. Sometimes they are completely necessary and helpful, and sometimes they're not needed. So in this video, I will go over 3 main common types of underpaintings, when to use each type, and the pros and cons. And surely there are a million more types of underpaintings than the ones I'll mention, but these are the main ones that I've seen and tried and liked. So the 3 types of underpaintings that we'll talk about are monochromatic with 2 variations, opposite color on the color wheel, and true color. And if you're an oil painter, you can do any of these underpaintings in acrylic paint or oil paint. If you're an acrylic painter, then you can do your underpainting in acrylic paint. So the first type of underpainting we'll talk about is monochromatic. There are 2 main ways that I've seen, and the first one is grayscale or black and white. The second one is burnt sienna and white or sepia. I personally really like and prefer the burnt sienna and white. This is one of my favorite methods, and it's really great for landscapes and portraits. It gives a very sunsetty glow that you really can't get with just painting. It has to shine through as an underpainting. There are really no cons to this method except that sometimes it can be a little dark if you're painting like very light translucent colors on top of it. And then the grayscale method is something that the old masters would do often. They would paint an entire first layer with full shading and everything in grayscale, and then they would actually glaze on top of that underpainting with colors. So you can glaze with a little bit of pigment and then like linseed oil or other mixtures, and it gives a really interesting effect. So if you're going for a look like that, then glazing and using grayscale is a good option. You don't have to glaze with grayscale. You could do this method for like a very cool toned painting or a black and white painting. The pros are, if you're coming from drawing and you're a beginner painter, grayscale can actually be a great method because it's very similar to drawing in the fact that you're only using black and white, so you're already used to, seeing those values. But a con would be that you don't get the nice glowing sunsetty effect that you would get with the burnt sienna method, so just keep that in mind. And another pro with the monochromatic methods is that it's a very quick startup time. You just have 2 colors and you can just get started with your underpainting, so that is nice. And these methods actually help you to see values clearer as well. Values are the light, medium, and dark tones in a painting, so when you only focus on 2 colors if you're underpainting, you really learn to see values really well, and that's crucial for a painting looking correct and proportional. Okay, so the next method we're going to talk about is using the opposite color on the color wheel as your underpainting. The purpose of this method is basically to dull the colors that are going to go on top of the underpainting. So for example, if you have a bright green leaf and you paint your underpainting red where that leaf is, and then later after you let it dry you paint green on top for the leaf, that red is going to shine through a bit and actually make the green a little bit more dull and earthy and more realistic. So it's actually a good thing that you're dulling the colors, because colors straight out of the tube are typically bright and harsh and unrealistic. So this method is actually a great way to just automatically make everything look a little bit more interesting, realistic. I still don't recommend using paint straight out of the tube. Like, I would still mix interesting colors as your top layers, but if you want to just use paint straight out of the tube, then this would be a good underpainting for you because it will automatically dull those colors. I like this method for portraits and like figurative work. I find that it looks really good with like skin tone and fabrics, so I would use it then. The only con is that you have to get out a few more colors, so it's a little bit slower startup time than the monochromatic methods. And the third type of underpainting that I'll talk about is true color, which is simply just painting the colors that you see in your photo or still life. So think of it like a less precise draft version of your painting. So this is less of a specialized underpainting and more of just like a first draft, like first layer. So a big pro is that, like I said, you're getting a draft version of your painting. So if you don't like something, then you can actually see it right there before you do all the hard work in the main layers. so you can fix your underpainting and then go in with your next layers. So it's kind of a preview. I also feel like you get a sense of accomplishment using this method because it looks like a finished painting almost. You already have your colors in the right place, your proportions and everything, so it just feels like you did a good amount of hard work already. And for this method, you can just use paint straight out of the tube if you want. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just like a draft, and it can be, you know, a little messy or whatever. It doesn't need to be perfect. Really no cons with this method except you wouldn't get like a glow from like the burnt sienna method, and you have to get out a few more colors, but the true color method is really good for any type of painting. I want to also mention that these are just my opinions based on trial and error and lots of mistakes. I'm sure everybody out there has a different opinion on underpaintings, and there's probably other types and other theories, but this is just my experience. So I encourage you to try every method and see what works for your artwork, because every artwork responds differently to different underpaintings. So see what you like and play around. So if you're an oil painter, should you use acrylic or oil for your underpainting? Well, it's completely up to you. I personally use oil paint just because I love oil paint, and once I switched from acrylic a few years ago, I just never looked back. I still have acrylic in my studio, but I just prefer to use oil paint because it's luscious, thick, rich, nice, and beautiful. But in saying that, acrylic paint is very cheap and quick to dry, so there are some benefits to using it for an underpainting. So if you want to paint your whole painting in one day, you might want to do an acrylic underpainting in the morning, and then you can paint after it dries a couple hours later. Or if you want to save a few dollars by doing your underpaintings in acrylic, that's a good idea as well. With either way, just make sure to let your underpainting dry really well before you go in with your next layers. And as far as when to use which type of underpainting, well, definitely the burnt sienna and white method is amazing for landscapes. Stunning in landscapes and nature paintings. Also portraits, gives a nice glow. As I mentioned, grayscale is good for glazing or cool toned paintings. The opposite color method could be used anytime, but I really like it for figurative work or even like interiors, like inside a room or something like that. And then true color method, honestly, anytime is good because it's basically just a first layer, a first draft version. Now, when do you not need an underpainting? Well, anytime you want, really. You don't have to ever do an underpainting if you don't want to. I often don't do them anymore, but sometimes they can be really helpful. So I know some people love them, some people hate them. For example, with plein air, like painting outside, you may not want to do one. With painting certain things, like I used to paint fruit a lot, and fruit is very translucent, and I noticed that when I did an underpainting, it was too dark when it shined through. So with certain like translucent things, you may just want to go straight into the painting. And also you may not want to do an underpainting if you just want to get started and jump into your painting, or you like to do your paintings in one sitting, which sometimes I like to do. So yeah, it's you know, just see what you like. I will also quickly mention that another thing you could do if you're an oil painter is you can try water mixable oil paints as your underpainting, or you can paint with them all the time. But I like doing that sometimes as my underpainting because you can mix it with water, so it's easy to just get started, and you can do really good washes. Like if you know what a wash is, it's like a watery first layer. You can do that really well with water mixable oil paint. So that's a tip. I really like those when I'm just feeling lazy and want to jump in and there's not as much cleanup. So okay, well that's really about it. Thank you for diving deep into the world of underpaintings with me today. I hope you learned something, and I would love to hear from you. What is your favorite type of underpainting? Do you love them? Do you hate them? What type do you use in your daily practice? So let me know, and thank you so much for watching.